joy and honor today to have Carolyn Anderson and Katharine Roske from the United States with me in this conversation for the Conscious Evolution Summit. And I want to just read a brief introduction from both so that you know a bit about them if you haven't known them before. So Carolyn Anderson is the co-founder and co-director of Global Family and a founding steward of Hummingbird Community in northern New Mexico. She has been living and sharing the principles and practices of co-creation for over 3 decades, also in the Co-Creators Handbook, which we will talk about. And I'm really thrilled to have you here, Carolyn.
Thank you.
And Katharine Roske engaged in co-creative practices for decades. Karen is a visionary, a social pioneer, an educator, committed to cultivating whole systems health and soul-centric culture guided by love. What a beautiful thing to do. She's also co-founder and really active. She's living in the Hummingbird community. She is co-executive director of Hummingbird Transformational Living Center and also co-author of the Co-Creators Handbook. And this is it. And I really can everybody encourage to buy this book. It's working with you. It's not just that you read in it, it's really working with you. And yeah, so I find it just so valuable to have it here. And whenever I feel kind of stuck in any kind of team work or even in a one-on-one relationship, I get so much inspiration out of it. And I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for putting all of that together.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And maybe we just start, and I leave it to you who wants to start sharing what kind of brought you on this path to bring these pieces together for co-creation, because we nowadays know that co-creation is kind of a used word in the corporate world, but what you mean about co-creation is really something different. And just give us a bit of a context of that.
Okay, well, I'm happy to begin. Maybe begin by defining how we use the word co-creation, because as you suggested, if you Google the word, you go to Wikipedia, you get the business description, which is really more about cooperation and collaboration. But our definition is about aligning with nature's creative process and doing that internally and externally, or we might say vertically and horizontally, and also individually and collectively. So we know there is a divine intelligence that is governing all life. And co-creation is about tapping into that divine intelligence, doing it within ourselves and with one another. Yeah, so these practices came into my life in 1983. My husband and I were working with Barbara Marx Hubbard, who you know, in her campaign for a positive future. She was running for Vice President of the United States. And what she was really doing was sharing a vision with the American public. So it was in the course of that campaign, sitting in a circle, there were 12 of us on the team who were guiding that campaign. It was in that resonant field that these processes started coming through me. And I believe that each one of us is a master in some arena. We're all coded with our particular genius. Some people are artists, some are musicians. Well, this is what I'm coded with. So in that field, these practices came through. And Barbara's genius, one of her many geniuses, was to be a social architect, to look at a process and to be able to write it down, to draw the template. Oh, this is what's going on here. And once you write it down, then you can replicate it. You can share it with other people. And that's what Katharine and I have done in the handbook, is now share these processes so that others can pick up the book and call together a couple of friends and do the processes.
Beautiful. And Katharine.
Yeah, so just to add a bit more to the story, Makasha, my husband of 45 years, and I met Barbara back in 1974 when we were putting on an event called World Invocation Day, a big festival in Boulder that also was a link up for world peace with people all around the world. And that was the first time I actually heard the word co-creation, and also during that time was exposed to Sri Aurobindo and the mother and the ideas of conscious evolution. So all that was birthed for me in the mid 70s. And it wasn't until coming together with Carolyn in the late 80s when we joined, our organization was World Family, and she had co-founded Global Family, and we brought our work together. And as she spoke about being encoded with these principles, that is definitely true for myself as well. So I feel like we were living them, but we didn't have, they weren't defined as a way that could be then taught or transmitted to other people. So then we brought these practices into Hummingbird. When we founded Hummingbird in 1996, was really part of our whole inspiration, was to be able to come together, live together. And what does it mean to actually express these and do this 24/7 rather than just every now and then? So it really has been a lifetime path for me, for sure.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is that when I let this in, what you shared is, I feel that my energy is really going from my head into my heart and into my body. So I sense really this quality of embodiment, what you transmit in these practices and in these teachings. And I assume that this is also a very big difference from, let's say, from the corporate world, where a lot of energy is in intellect and in intelligence and mental stuff. And here really the energy moves to the heart and to the core and really into the body. And I also sense, that's really interesting, being held in something bigger. So I can really relax and let something move through me and use me. And as I'm kind of sensitive to what you share and what you talk about, my body already translates it in a way. And I just wonder, was this already so obvious for you, or was it a process of really working with it, applying it in your relationships, in your teams? From which parts are needed to be engaged in that?
Well, Priya, I love what you just shared. It's so beautiful and it's so totally accurate. You know, co-creation is a heart-based process. And you can't co-create unless you are in resonance, connecting heart to heart with one another, or in resonance, in coherence within yourself. And that is a distinction, because with the business definition, because for cooperation or collaboration, you can do that mentally. People who don't care for one another can cooperate with one another. If they have aligned goals, they can do that. You can't co-create unless you are in your, as you said, embodied as essence, in a place of non-judgment, open-heartedness. That opens the space for co-creation. So that's an imperative building block. It's a foundational element of co-creation.
Yeah, and as we move from the transformation from a dominating culture that we're all surrounded in and have been raised in, to one that's really honoring of the circle and more embodying the feminine principles, it's a practice of opening to what wants to emerge, of deep listening, of being highly attuned to each other and to Gaia, and to a subtler plane. So it's both being guided by love and it's being deeply listening. And it's I always think of it kind of as an embrace or an openness, more of a circle It is. I mean, it's based on principles of a circle rather than a hierarchical model where there's dominance and control and fear as the driving forces.
Yeah, and my sense is also that in a way, I would say maybe it was a luxury in the past, or maybe some people were interested in, but my sense is that in the huge transition we are in, and in this huge opportunity to really create and co-create another reality than we are facing right now, my sense is this is a issue and a topic everyone will be involved in. And I would like to hear, what is your sense? Why is co-creation so important right now?
Yeah. Well, gosh, when we look into the world, look into our personal lives and look into the larger collective, we see that there is so much disruption going on for humanity all over the world between, we've dealt with the pandemic and the economic collapse in many countries. And then this whole movement, Black Lives Matter, and so on. So there's a lot of disruption going on, and that generates in most people a certain level of fear, anxiety, feelings of separation. Then also at the social level, we're dealing with this juxtaposition of totalitarianism and democracy. So in the United States, people are very polarized. So if we say, what does society really need now? What does Gaia need now? We need love. We need that feeling of connection. We need creative expression. We need for each person to be sharing their genius. And we need empowerment so that together we can make this shift to this new world that we all dream is possible. So that's where co-creation comes in. It does all those things. It brings more love, more creativity, and more empowerment.
And I think there's also such a strong movement of people wanting to make a difference, of wanting to contribute their gifts into the collective transformation and looking for ways to do that. We often speak of that we're hospicing the old while we're midwifing the new, that which is being born, and we're between stories. So it's like the old story is no longer relevant, and we're looking for a new mythos, a new story to be able to step into. And I feel co-creation is at the foundation of that. So I think there's more ripeness, readiness, like a deep yearning for something different. And that is a beautiful opportunity then for these practices that maybe people recognized or acknowledged as important. Now it's like I think a deep movement from within to actualize them, to embody them.
And maybe make it also very clear, what do you understand when you use the term resonance and coherence, because this is so fundamental for co-creation.
I think ultimately those are terms of physics. So resonance, one way to describe that is resounding, echoing back and forth. We might say being on the same frequency, being in harmony within ourselves, aligning body, mind, spirit that we are, and doing that with one another, essence to essence, heart to heart. So we always use the term resonance because it implies the open-heartedness, but I also like the word coherence because resonance is coherent. Yeah. It's also a way to align our thoughts, our words, our deeds, that everything's in alignment, and that moves the universe. When everything's in alignment, in coherence, things can change.
And would one of you be willing, I mean, this is just coming to my mind, to lead us a bit, everyone who is now joining our conversation, everyone who cares about the situation we are in, and everybody who participates in this summit is in a way already on a similar wavelength, I assume, but maybe you could guide us a little bit so that we really all sense this possibility to be in this resonance and in this coherence together.
Mm-hmm. Would you like to do that, Katharine?
So what you're inviting is a attunement together?
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Just a little one to kind of really sense and feel it, what we are talking about.
All right, I'll do that. So I invite everyone to close your eyes if you're willing, and just take a moment first to connect with your breath, the holiness of our breath, of our life, and feeling the preciousness of this incarnation. And feeling our deep connection with Gaia, and the energies moving and connecting with all of creation. And our deep weave of interconnectedness and interdependence. As we feel our energies moving down into the core of Gaia and then being nurtured, and as those energies rise up within us. And in this vertical connection, feeling a deep resonance and interconnectedness with the invisible realm and all that is present, surrounding and supporting us in this great evolutionary journey. And bringing these energies together in our hearts, feeling the connection heart to heart with everyone that is listening to this call and will listen to it in the future, and feeling this big movement of pioneering souls, of so many dedicated to transformation and the new earth, which is emerging for a more harmonious, vibrant life together. Feeling this network all around the world, connecting heart to heart. As we all give our gifts, each individual and unique and so needed at this time, for the upliftment of all, in service to the well-being of every aspect of life, for whole systems health and well-being. So be it.
So be it. Thank you.
So be it. So beautiful. I really, I feel so connected to, I feel like a huge embrace around the globe and even into the universe. And I also sense with that this support. I sense support from every angle reaching us, and beautiful. And I can relate so much to what you said, this every skill is needed. So every unique expression, what every one of us brings is needed. So there is no one more important or better than the other. It's really this diversity, what we all bring. And you, Carolyn, you also mentioned this creativity. This is so called forth to share it, to bring it in this co-creating a new world. And I feel it really now very alive with you bringing us into that field. So thank you very much, Katharine, for that. That's really powerful.
You know, Paria, one of the things we've learned over the years living these principles is that if you're going to create a co-creative team, you have to have diversity. If you don't have the diversity, you can't co-create. So you have to have a spiritual element, which is the vision. You have to have the emotional component, which is the resonance, holding the heart space. You have to have a mental component, which is setting up all the systems and the structures. And then you have to have the physical, which is the implementation. So you can have that in as few as 2 people, as long as you have each one of those aspects. Where you might, you know, the first co-creative team I was a part of, there were 12 of us. But that can happen with 2 people, 4 people, whatever it is. But if you don't have those 4 elements, then you're not operating in the co-creative model.
Mm-hmm. That makes totally sense. I mean, I lived for nearly 6 years in a community, and there it was really, we experienced there too many skills just in 1 or 2 of the sectors you mentioned, and then it doesn't, it's so exhausting because you try to keep something, and you have always the sense you push a bus up the hill, and it's not really then sustainable being an organism and vital. And I guess, Katharine, you will have many experience of that in living so long in a community.
Yeah, and you have, you know, when you have the visionaries, and then you have those that are very practically oriented. And as Carolyn said, all of that is needed, but to work the edges of that, you know, and then there's people that are more process oriented, and then more like, let's just get the job done. And so all these different edges, I think that, you know, we often refer to co-creation as a relational path to awakening, you know, and it's so much about working all of these edges, all of our differences that really blend together to weave, you know, into a beautiful tapestry, to be able to really deeply appreciate those differences. And to then draw them forth in a way that you can work together and in creation. But if, you know, what Carolyn said about the team and the balance of the team, we're so fortunate in our living co-creation business that Carolyn and her husband Sanford and Makasha and I have together, that we have this beautiful balance between all of these. But it's like Sanford initially was not honoring himself in the setting up of systems and structures, which was totally what galvanized the business to ground, because he was with 3 visionaries. So it's beautiful honoring. Yeah, and everybody's party central.
Yes, and I just wonder, have you, I mean, your book is full of beautiful exercises and practices, but I just wonder if you can share 1 or 2 favorite things, just when you find yourself or another more in an egocentric position where you kind of lose the heart and the essence connection. What is your favorite thing to come back, either yourself or guide another? Because that's so essential.
Well, one of the foundational elements of the Co-Creators Handbook are the Co-Creators Agreements. And those were brought into Global Family in 1987 from a group in Boulder called the Geneva Group. And the co-group, what we've learned about agreements is that we all live in agreement fields all the time. You know, recently we've had this agreement field, or we have this Black Lives Matter. That's an agreement. We have that agreement. We're holding that collectively. In a large company, this would be called the corporate culture. These are the principles that guide us. These are the values that guide us. So we have co-creators agreements. And I'll read you one of those, Paria, that I think answers your question. How do we make that shift if we're operating from our ego and feeling separate from one another? So one of these agreements is resolve problems constructively. I agree to take problems, complaints, and upsets to the person or persons with whom I can resolve them at the earliest opportunity. I agree not to criticize or complain to someone who cannot do something about my complaint, and I will redirect others to do the same. Now, can you imagine if you think if all of us actually did that and stopped all the gossiping and the enhancing the separation by talking about other people and their shortcomings? So we have 20 of these agreements, and when we share them with others, we encourage teams of people to use these as a basis and then create their own. Change the language, maybe eliminate some of them, add their own to make them their own, to co-create with them.
Yeah, we made the habit. I join a weekly group, which kind of is a continuation of what started with Barbara Marx Hubbard.
Oh, yeah.
We just from time to time, again, just read these agreements to realign. And I just love reading them and being in the space of it. It's really powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to actually share one more because I think it really is take responsibility. I agree to take responsibility for my creations, my reactions, my experience, and my relationships. And so taking self-responsibility is so core to the culture, co-creative culture, because once we can move out of being a victim and projecting that somebody's doing something to us and really take responsibility and take all conflict that arises inside and work with it and see where it's maybe activating an old childhood wound or whatever might be the case. But, then we do that internal healing, and then we come together from a place of love with another person to clear whatever might be in the way. But it's empowering to be able to really take responsibility rather than being the victim, or, the culture's doing it to me, or the government, or the president, or, whatever it might be, where one feels like powerless, you can't do anything. But it's a whole nother place of come from when you really take responsibility. So that's a powerful one for me, and I think for the perpetuation of the culture.
Yeah. One of the things I'd like to add here is that, for me, co-creation has involved slowing down. That to maintain that heart space, which is so foundational to this, to slow down, to add the deep listening and really being with one another. And when we slow down, then we can speed up. Then we get the clear guidance. Oh, this is our next step. This is what's wanting to happen next. And then we can move right into it. And that's very different from sort of the mainstream culture where people think, move, get a lot done, not enough time.
Yeah, absolutely. That is such a good point, because I also do, when I recognize that I have the sense, oh, there is not enough time, there is so much, I always stop everything and slow down, because I know when I have this sense, let's say my anchor or my momentum is not in the right place. Then I'm too much in expectations or too much in ideas of what is necessary. And when I then slow down, everything falls into place, and most of the time I can do much more than I would do when I stay in this. Yeah. Beautiful. Because I assume that many people notice that in their lives, this sense, oh, so much to do and so little time. And but this is really feedback. This is feedback. Oh, I need to shift. My core is not in the right place, and I'm not really aligned. Yeah.
Yeah, if you think about it, by aligning with divine intelligence, then that divine intelligence can operate through you and moves the whole universe.
And Katharine, what also came to my mind when I was listening to you with this pointing to responsibility is that also in your book you describe and you share about sometimes it's really necessary to part or to make decision, because sometimes you are not in the right combination with the right skills and people to really be able to co-create. And I also remember that you said in the book, when you notice yourself too much in processing and triggering all the time, this might just show this. And maybe you can speak to that, because I also think that everybody knows the situation.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as as well intended and as much as we want to be able to just always resolve the conflicts that arise, there's just sometimes where it's just, you know, there's not an easy fit between people for whatever reason. And then a healthy differentiation actually serves both the individual and the whole. So we have processes for differentiation, and I've facilitated them for couples in a really beautiful way where, you know, a couple, even those that have been married, can come together and actually acknowledge the gifts of what's happened during their relationship, what they've received from it, what they really honor and value in the other person. And then to be able to say, and now it's time, you know, that we move in different ways, that our lives are going in different directions, or they're just, it's going to be more beneficial for us not to be working or be married or whatever it is so closely together. So we've definitely had, you know, those moments here at Hummingbird, and it's difficult. It can be difficult emotionally, especially if not everyone's clear that differentiation is the best way, but it usually always proves to be what's healthiest for forward movement, individually and collectively.
Yeah, and then I have the sense that we are not really very skilled as a culture in ending. We are so focused on starting and running things, but we tend to look away in parts where it's about ending.
Yeah.
And my sense is that really, and then we often also make things bad because then it's maybe easier to leave or to go away because it's bad. But yeah, I really love bringing awareness to the fact that bringing a relationship, a project, a life, whatever, beautifully to an ending. This is for me the base for starting something else.
Yeah, I was in a core group in Santa Barbara a number of years ago. And there are two kinds of core groups we speak about. One we call a resonant core group, and the focus of those is for people who are evolving spiritually, evolving personally, but they're not working on a project together. And then we have a co-creative core group where you are focused on, you know, actually creating a company or a business or a project. So this particular core group was a resonant core group. And there was a woman in that group who felt the need to leave the group. And we did a ceremony. We did a completion ceremony, and it was lovely, and there were beautiful, and she felt a little guilty. She felt like she was breaking something up here. And it was really interesting because about 2 years later, she called us and she said, you know, I'm missing that group so much. Could I come back in? So she came back in, we did a welcoming ceremony, and it was so beautiful. The whole thing was so effortless, so harmonious, and it was like, wow, we really did a good job here.
Beautiful. And I mean, nature shows us also the cycles beautifully. Anything you want to highlight really regarding this? We mentioned it already. We are really in a very special time as whole humanity, facing into the unknown. Many systems, what we know, are breaking down. There are so many questions. We don't know. Do events happen? Do I have a job again? What is with the money? Any ideas what you want to share to kind of help us to direct our awareness into a direction which is supportive to move through this time?
Well, my response would be both an individual response and then for the collective as well. You know, co-creation is about tapping into the inner wisdom. So I think it's really helpful for people, and I imagine most people who are watching this do have their own spiritual practice, but to have a daily practice where we center and we ground and we look within for that wisdom that resides there. And then to be in some sort of what we call a core group, call it a wisdom circle, an evolutionary circle of project team by whatever name, but a group of supportive friends, colleagues who can meet you at that heart space, and where together we can look within and ask for guidance and call on divine intelligence to lead the way. I think that's real. I mean, I'm so happy I have both of those in my life. Really grateful.
Mm-hmm.
And I think also just to keep the awareness that we're in this major cycle, you know, kind of expand out into the bigger picture of these evolutionary cycles that we're in, and whether it's whatever tradition it's looked at from, there's so much prophecy that's converging, that's revealing and lighting up these times as, you know, the movement into a whole new era. And so to kind of rest into that and to really have compassion for ourselves and for one another, you know, knowing that we're riding the rapids, you know, or we're surfing, you know, in more and more turbulent waters. And as Carolyn beautifully spoke to that need for the inner connection and alignment, just to keep strengthening that so we can be more and more resilient, to be able to ride those waves with a groundedness inside of ourselves that's deeply, deeply connected, especially with Gaia, because I feel like she, as a larger body of consciousness, is guiding us, and that yearning for community on so many levels, and to, as we spoke before, to have the opportunities to express what we're here for, to express our unique gifts, then creates that fulfillment. I think that creates the inner security, so that when jobs fall apart or money's not there or systems break down, you know, that we really know that there's a birth happening. And Barbara Hubbard used to speak always so eloquently to our planetary birth, you know, and feeling the imminence of it, and we're in it. We're in the birth canal. So it's trusting, or the beautiful analogy that's often of the caterpillar to the butterfly, the whole metamorphic journey. So it's trusting this bigger energy that's taking place, and tuning into our part within it.
Thank you so much. Yeah, and I really resonate with this community. I mean, was it Thich Nhat Hanh who said the next step of evolution will be, the next Buddha will be a community, I guess he said?
Yeah, we've used that here at Hummingbird since our very beginnings. That's been, and also a beautiful quote, I don't know if I'll get it quite right, but by Ilya Prigogine, of small islands of coherence in a sea of chaos have the capacity to lift the whole system to a higher order. So as we establish these strong core groups, and then the pattern that's within the handbook is the convergence, of course, that happens, you know, more and more. And I've felt such an acceleration of that over these past many months, of just more and more sense of the global network of everyone that is working together for the emergence.
And for people to join one of those groups, can they just contact you, or is there kind of an initial event happening that they after that can join it? How does it work? Because I assume that some people would really be interested in joining such a supportive group.
Well, the easiest and sort of the most typical way is people buy the handbook, the Co-Creators Handbook 2.0. And call a few friends. So one of a couple ways. It might be call a few friends and create your own group, and that might be then be a resonant core group. Or if you're part of a project and you want to make sure you're following the co-creative path, then again you can just buy the book, and it's an experiential guidebook. So that's one way. We will be doing a telecourse. We don't have the date for it yet, but Maria, you have already offered very generously to let others know about that. So we will be doing a telecourse about co-creation. And and then our website, our best website is probably livingcocreation.com, where people can get the book and find what we're up to.
And the nature of core groups is very much self-organizing. You know, Carolyn's work with Global Family back in the late 80s and early 90s, and over in Europe and Russia, and just how that they just sprung up everywhere. Core groups sprung up everywhere. And then Global Family acts as a network to link those core groups together. But I think they're spontaneously arising. So it's not like a central system that's
totally decentralized.
Yeah, it's more of a rising up.
I see it like kind of nature putting seeds all over the place, and they pop up and they connect. And I mean, I'm part of different groups, and I just found out that it doesn't matter. We all have the same aim, really supporting each other in shifting into our heart, being in our essence, being supportive of each other. And we all long for a world which is more justice, more sustainable, more working for every being. So there is already a lot happening, and we already come together. And I also receive a lot of support also in the summit and spreading about it and also co-creating. So we are already in the midst of it.
Absolutely.
And I really want to thank you from the bottom of my heart, because you both are representing really pioneers in this work. You bring so much heart and richness and embodiment in this work and what you share. And it's in this way, it's really just opening yourself, just receiving these waves from the book and apply it. And it's so wonderful what you made available for us.
Thank you for what you're putting forth. Yeah, so appreciated and making such a difference.
Thank you.
And I also want to thank everyone who joined this conversation. And I want to show you the book again. I highly recommend. Use it, work with it, spread it, share it, and connect. And we will create a world where we know it's possible. I'm so sure. Thank you.
It's assured.
Thank you.